As a child, we all long for a hero. As a society as a whole, we search for that leader that can be our hero. But as we mature and as we grow, it dawned on us that the hero is inside every one of us. And in the world's social media, we all start at zero. And slowly we search deep within ourselves to find who we are. And we have that moment of truth where we embrace that the hero that we've been searching for has been there all along. It is living deep inside of every one of us. And we start embracing that journey and we become that hero that we search for.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to episode 118 of Zero to Hero presented by J29 Creative Group. We have an absolute green hero coming to you today. He's a hero that knows how to harness the power of the wind. His name is Joe Spease. He is the president and CEO of WindSoHy LLC. So let's go ahead and bring him in. Joe, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great, Gino. Thanks for having me today. Look forward to this conversation.
Well, thank you for joining me. I'm excited to hear about this. So before we really get into this, what is WindSoHy? What do you guys do? What do you have coming up?
Yeah, WindSoHy started actually about 16 years ago. We understood that we had to get to a zero carbon economy. And to achieve that is going to require energy storage, long duration energy storage as it's defined now, and some type of fuel that is zero carbon. The only really reasonable practical option to satisfy that problem, that goal, is green hydrogen. So we've been promoting the development of those technologies for the longest time, and especially the development of compressed air energy storage that now, finally, after some encouragement from me to Siemens Corporation, we now have a green hydrogen component with a brand new, first ever in the history of the world, hydrogen combustion chamber that was just announced last November. I was on heading out on a 2-week trade mission to China, and I got to share the news of that development, which is critical to the future of the planet. I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah.
We hope our children have a future. We need
Right.
these technologies. So we've been developing these things in anticipation of where the energy industry has evolved today.
I love it. I love it. And it really doesn't make sense not to do this kind of thing, right? I mean, this is free energy that, I mean, in your case, is created by the earth, right? It's wind that's moving through that. We're capturing that energy and then converting that into usable energy is really the case. I think there's some really cool new technology that's coming out with water energy as well and storing those. I don't know if you've seen that at all. I'm sure you have as you're in the field, but just the motion of the ocean literally is what is creating the energy for the buoy type systems and everything like that. But
well, yesterday they just announced in China, and I'm steeped because I have project proposals into China. China just announced they just started operations yesterday of a 3.6 gigawatt, that's 3,600 megawatts of pumped storage hydropower. Now
wow.
it's a unique water energy, but it's a really cool system. And China's done, they're leading the world in the development of that particular water energy technology.
Amazing. So kind of forecasting into the future, obviously we are not 0% emissions now, right? If we were to continue down this path of really researching these options and putting them into play and then making it more widespread, how far away do you think we may be from reaching that goal?
Well, the technology is ready right now. And that's what's important for people to understand. We're not talking about solutions that are several years away. If the only issue there is it takes 3 to 4 years to develop a project with my technology. And I'm going to explain it to you so you understand what's in play here.
Yeah.
With compressed air energy storage, you use wind power at night to power these really large compressors. These are large projects. They're as big as coal power plants and nuclear plants and some of the larger natural gas plants. They can be several hundred to 1,000 megawatts of power, but you use wind power at night to power these compressors that make air that's injected into underground natural geologic formations. And that's one of the things that we're developing that is completely unique. It had never been done before in using things like depleted natural gas wells or saline aquifers to store the air. Because after all you're doing is putting inert air into these formations under pressure. Then to create electricity, you just release that pressurized air and that just blows through. It's a modified combustion turbine. Just think of a jet engine the fan blades on a jet engine. It spins something that looks a little like that to make electricity. So it's actually a very simple technology. Now, the green hydrogen comes into play in that as that air is stored underground, it's very hot under pressure. And as it's released, there is a phenomenon in physics called supercooling, where that air supercools to the point, if it's not reheated, it creates two problems. It can actually get so cold, it creates ice that damages the blades on that turbo machinery. Or the bigger problem, which is the simple fact that everyone understands this, warmer air holds a greater volume than colder air. So to create efficiency in the system, it needs to be reheated. And to achieve that requires the combustion of hydrogen, which that had never been done. We know how to combust natural gas. That's been going on for quite some time. But hydrogen is trickier because it burns much hotter. It burns so hot, it can melt metal. So we had to conceive of a way of hydrogen combustion. And 12 years ago, I went to Siemens Corporation and explained to the executives at Siemens Corporation, the big giant global company, that they needed to develop hydrogen combustion chambers to make possible this zero carbon compressed air energy storage system. So, and I explained that the reason for that is the hydrogen industry is going to evolve to the point where it is today, where it's the hottest topic in the energy industry. And that's hydrogen not used just for vehicle fuel, but in the power frame. And there are only really two ways right now that you can use hydrogen for power, and they're not quite available yet. The compressed air energy storage is, now that we have the hydrogen combustion chamber. But Siemens is also developing, and will be ready in about a year and a half, an actual hydrogen power plant that functions just like a natural gas power plant, just using hydrogen. But in our technology, you have a hydrogen plant that feeds this compressed air energy storage system, and you inject hydrogen into this combustion chamber. It's combusted to generate heat, and it's just the heat from that combustion that is used to reheat the air in the compressed air system. So what you have is an incredibly inexpensive electricity generating source that's zero carbon. First of all, when your primary fuels, as it were, are air and the heat from hydrogen combustion, you have an incredibly inexpensive resulting electricity. Yeah. And that's how it works. Do you have questions about that? Does that make sense?
No, it's amazing. It's amazing. I can't wait to tell they're everywhere. Right? I mean, that's the ultimate goal, right? Is get these things all over the place, and let's change up how we're doing things. You know, that burn as little as possible. Natural gas or coal, right? Either way,
yeah, we won't need fossil fuels anymore once this technology is fully developed and with projects built everywhere. We won't need fossil fuels at all. And the good news is it's cheaper than natural gas and coal power. So it's not just an environmental solution, it's an economic solution as well.
It's a no-brainer, Joe. It's a no-brainer, man. Absolutely. So, Joe, I'm going to ask you to put WindSoHy aside for just a second. I know that's a huge part of who you've become over the last 16 years, but putting that aside, give us the elevator pitch about who you are. Who is Joe Spease?
Joe Spease is a really dedicated person, dedicated to civilization. I've always bought into the idea that civilization is the most important element in our lives, in that if you look at what is the purpose of civilization, civilization's purpose is to improve ourselves. And I mean that in the collective sense, but it needs to be applied individually. And I've always worked at improving myself, taking part in all the elements of civilization, especially music. I'm a big music lover. I helped write a jazz history textbook years ago. I've sung in operas. I understand classical music very well, and that and great literature and great theater. And of course, today one of the most important cultural influences is in through Hollywood and the movies that we watch. But I've been just devoted to civilization, that idea of improving ourselves. And right now we face an existential threat in climate change that had to be addressed. We needed someone working on technologies like the ones I've developed if we hope for a future for our children. I mean that quite literally. So that's who I am. I'm a civilized guy working on making sure we have civilization for our children going forward.
I love it. I love it. And I'm a music lover of the arts as well. It's amazing. So typically here, Joe, I ask people about social media. That's not a big focus for you guys, but you have used technology. So tell us a little bit about how you guys have used technology in really developing WindSoHy.
Yeah, it's the most basic things, just starting with computers, and people take them for granted now. But I'm old enough that we've worked through this evolution where they were just emerging onto the scene, and it changed everything about how we interact. And now so much of what we do starts with computers. Social media, not quite so much. That's not as essential. We use it obviously just through websites and the use of Facebook and LinkedIn and things like that. But the way we can construct images and messages and important communication now, it all starts there. And so all those things are really important to what we do. The social media component, not so much, but the technology, as elemental as computers, still just fascinate me to no end. And their importance is only going to increase. And I'll just give you one application right now into what we're doing. This technology that we've developed is going to change the way power is managed in the electric grid. So to manage that, to make sure it is safely and successfully integrated into the system, they're just in the process now of developing these new, and this requires supercomputers. It's extremely expensive to develop. It's called energy modeling. You have to be able to predict successfully how the energy that we're producing is going to affect the existing electricity in the grid in terms of, it's called capacity expansion, the amount of power that's available in the grid at any one particular time. And we're going to change that, since we'll be taking wind power at night off the grid, channeling it into the production of compressed air and hydrogen at night. That's going to change dramatically how power is flowing at night, and then power flow models. So there are these extremely powerful computer systems that are just in the process of being developed now that will be essential to the effective integration of all renewable energies, but especially the types of things we're doing that are revolutionary. They're going to completely alter the way energy flows into the grid. So that's a quick just explanation of the technologies we're concerned about and the ones that must be developed. I hope that answered your question.
Absolutely. No, and I That's absolutely, it's great. It's everything, right? I mean, that's without the technology to really develop these things, where would we be, right? I mean, it would you would capture it and then you'd use it and then it'd be gone, right? So,
Yep.
I love it. I love it. Now, Joe, every superhero has a defining moment. What do you think yours is, not only when it comes to your career but your life as well?
Well, the greatest influence in my life, I had a couple. Charlie Parker for one on the jazz side, and then Martin Luther King.
Okay.
Uh, the the courage that they demonstrated in creating positive change, and the racist struggles affecting Charlie Parker that he overcame, that enabled him to yet create this amazing music. I compare him to Mozart in terms of the importance of his work in the music world, and the bravery that it took to overcome all the racism he faced to create this magnificent music was just something that inspired me early on in my life. Starting with, I'd probably go back even earlier to Duke Ellington, but certainly Charlie Parker, because he was just such an amazing artist. But then Martin Luther King. Once I lived through and fought alongside the people promoting racial integration, to end segregation, to stop racism. It's just really important in a person's life to really put yourself in someone else's shoes and then understand their struggle. And if you're moved enough, join in the struggle. And I learned from them that you got to fight. I mean, the fossil fuel industry resisted the truth of climate change for the longest time. They denied that it was happening. We now know that for several decades, the fossil fuel companies really understood and knew that climate change was real and that burning fossil fuels was the cause of it. And so in our case, we've had to face a struggle against fossil fuel companies who haven't welcomed the technologies we're introducing warmly. There's been resistance. There have been threats. So when you look back and you say, what are we doing that is any different than what Charlie Parker or Martin Luther King did in their lives? It's nothing compared to the threats that they face. Martin Luther King gave his life and his struggle. So use that for inspiration and as the model for facing fights and working through struggles. Does that answer that?
I love it. I love it. And, I mean, if somebody's coming after you, you're clearly doing something, right? I think that's kind of the message there, right? Is
Exactly.
especially if it's an institution,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
You're definitely ruffling some feathers of people that don't want their feathers ruffled, for sure. And why would fossil fuel, in that industry, want somebody like you, right? I mean, it makes a ton of sense when you look at it from a financial standpoint, but when you look at it from a civilization standpoint, which you mentioned earlier, it's absolutely incredible, and it's mind-boggling to me. So I love that you brought that up. Now, Joe, everybody has attributes, right? We all have attributes that make up who we are. Villains have attributes as well as heroes, right? One of those villains that we just spoke about obviously has a few attributes of their own. But what are the attributes you really feel define what a hero is?
Well, I've studied. I was in honors course back in college where we were studying Joseph Campbell and this whole idea of what the hero is. What does that involve? And I don't know if you've read any of Joseph Campbell's works that look exactly at that question, but it's just a willingness to fight. You have to have persistence. Especially if I had a quality that I think I would toss out there, it's persistence and applying intelligence. There are lots of smart people in the world that really haven't done much with their lives, but you have to be willing to figure out problems, find the solution to those problems, and then persist. You have to just never give up, just fight to the bitter end. And that's what's been involved for me, because this has been a very difficult struggle. And it wasn't until I got the Department of Energy, I got connected to the former Secretary of Energy, Dr. Moniz, who embraced my technology and helped me get accepted through the Department of Energy, that this stuff really got accepted. So you got to be brave, you got to be persistent, you got to be smart, and you got to be willing to take on a fight.
I love it. I love it. All right, Joe, last question for you. I'm going to ask you to toot your horn just a little bit. If you had to compare Joe Spease to any superhero out there, who do you think that would be? And tell us a couple reasons why.
Any of the superheroes. Well, okay, if you're, I'd go back to Martin Luther King because I think he was a superhero. But if you're looking at the ones that people hang
whoever
that
you want
on, I always admired Superman.
Okay.
Because he had to overcome the kryptonite, and he used his power for good. He didn't just take power. If you look at some of the, I'm not going to mention any names in particular, but there are some very wealthy people today who have used their resources for less than helpful purposes as it relates to civilization. So I would go Superman. I would go Superman because he had to overcome the kryptonite. He used his powers for good, and that's okay with me. I like that.
I love it, and even as a non-human, right? I mean, he still showed a ton of empathy for all the humans on Earth, right? Which is speaks volumes. I think it's absolutely huge. Right. Joe, man, thank you so much for coming on the show. You were absolutely awesome. How can people get involved? If they want to help out, if they want to help share the message, where can they find you guys at? Where can they find information?
Well, on our website, www.windsohy.com. And then, of course, I always encourage people to go to the Department of Energy websites right now for the task forces created that involve my technology. And that's the Department of Energy's long duration energy storage Earthshot, where they're really focusing investments and creative energies behind the new technologies that I'm a part of. And then, of course, the hydrogen, the Department of Energy's hydrogen task force that is working to develop the hydrogen itself and all the related technologies, the electrolyzers, fuel cells, water purification systems, storage, carbon fiber cylinders, new material science things that are connected. So it's important that people just learn about stuff and understand it. So I'd go there.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, Joe, thank you again for coming on the show, man. Thanks everybody out there for tuning in.
Hey, are we still live? Hey guys, we're still live. Hey guys, this is Kevin Kwok, founder of J29 Creative Group. So who are we? We're a marketing agency here in Kansas City. We're all about a holistic approach to marketing that builds your brand and nurtures online community. But to be honest with you, you guys don't care.